wonderful. So delighted to have everyone here today. Are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. All righty. So delighted to have everyone here this evening. Thank you so much for joining us for the 1 year celebration of the first book of the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network. And we are celebrating the book entitled Health, Parenting, and Community Practices on Black Fatherhood, Defying Stereotypes and Amplifying Strengths. And I'm so grateful that we have representation from all of our 8 chapters this evening. So you will have an opportunity to be able to hear from all of our chapter authors this evening and also get to know a little bit more about the work that we do with the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network. So at this time, I would like to introduce our panelists. And what we're going to do first is just have you start with our first chapter. We have Dr. Williams representing our first chapter. I'm also a contributor for the first chapter as well. So if you could just state your name, title, and institution, and and we'll focus more on your chapters once we get started with our full discussion. But before we get started with those introductions, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording. So if you do have any questions as the speakers are speaking, you are more than welcome to insert your questions within the chat, and we will definitely get to those questions. And in addition to that, we will have an opportunity to hear from you during our Q&A at the end. So we definitely want to make sure that this is conversational as well. So we will have an opportunity to hear from all of our, guests if you have any questions at that time. And, fathers really matter. And so we're really excited to, hear, the perspectives of all of our authors. So if we could get started with a representative from chapter 1, and you could just give your name, the title of your chapter, and your institution or place of work. And I will get started with Dr. Ebony Williams.
Hello, I am Dr. Ebony Williams. I am currently at Louisiana State University. I'm serving as a part-time instructor right now. Um, the name of the chapter. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, no. Well, you should focus on our first chapter as well. So no problem at all.
Okay.
But we're so delighted to have you here joining us for our first chapter, which really went into some of the historical implications and looking at co-parenting as well. So we're so excited to hear from you once we get into our discussion, followed by our editors. So thank you, Dr. Williams. And do we have any representatives from chapter 2?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Latrice Rollins, and I am an associate professor at Morehouse School of Medicine. And we led the chapter on community-based participatory research with African American fathers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Rollins. And a representative from chapter 3.
Hi, my name is Kelly Holly. I am an ASU third year PhD student in the School of Social Work in Phoenix. And my chapter is called We Don't Know Much About Them, Supports and Practice Implications for Black Fathers of Autistic Children.
Oh, so interesting. Thank you so much, future Dr. Holly, and a representative from chapter 4.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tasha Austin. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh within the School of Medicine. And chapter 4, our chapter, is on Black fathers' involvement in early childhood programs. And I do want to give credit to Dr. Katrina Akande, who is with us in spirit. And so I want to make sure that her name is uplifted and acknowledged, as well as Dr. Thomas Cotton as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, and also for chapter 5.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brianna Lemons, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Social Work at Baylor University. And the title of my chapter is The In-Law Relationship as a Context for Strengthening Black Fathers and Families.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lemons. And chapter 6. Chapter 6 may be running a little behind, and that is okay. We will have potentially a representative once we get to that section of our discussion. So we'll skip right on to chapter 7.
Good evening. I believe that would be me if there's no other representative. I am Carl Root, Executive Director with the local nonprofit Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere, where our mission is to educate, equip, and empower men about maternal and child health related issues. Chapter 7 talked a lot about defying myths and stereotypes about Black fatherhood. And because of the progressive movement right now, it's like the natural order of things for us to move into reproductive health related issues, maternal and child health related issues. And I just wanted to bring some exposure to those father serving organizations that are now doing that. As a result, to take my work to an entirely different level, I became a perinatal patient navigator, as well as a certified lactation counselor and a holistic birth doula. As a responsible fatherhood practitioner, that's the way we're headed. And I'm so honored to be here with all of you doctors. And not only doctors, but females in fatherhood. You bring credibility to the work that I do, and I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Rout, for being here. And we are so grateful to have you be a part of this project as well. And last but not least, chapter 8.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with everybody. I'm Loretta McDonald. I am a affiliate faculty member at Virginia Tech and in the sociology department. And the chapter that I led with Dr. Lemons and Dr. Arroyo, who is not here with us today, is The Marathon Continues, African American Fathers and State Interventions in the Family.
Thank you so much, Dr. McDonald. We're also so grateful to have you here during this conversation. And now we get an opportunity to hear from our amazing editors, Dr. Alston, who started this project along with Dr. Lemons and Dr. Rollins. They're going to share a little bit about the vision behind this book, what inspired this volume, and just some reflections on the impact of this work since its publication. So we are delighted to hear from you. And Dr. Alston, you can get us started.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be with everyone and to be here, of course, with all of you tonight. The inspiration from the book, actually, the story, I'll give you the story. So the story is, I originally had a book published, Fathers in Education with Lexington Books, and the publishers reached out to me specifically to see if there was interest in doing another book. And I do want to give credit to Dr. Emily Williams, who is a editor with Lexington Books, and she is over the Black Atlantic Cultural Series. And during our discussion, I informed her, I said, I'm working with this wonderful network, Black Females in Fatherhood, and it would be beneficial if we could all collectively come together and do an edited volume of a book instead of just one book. I said, in that way, we could all show the work and expertise that we have and show the work that we're doing. And so that is pretty much how the book came together. And I'll let Latrice and Brianna, of course, chime in because this was a collective effort. And so they can go ahead and add the stuff. But that's how it initially started, was speaking with Dr. Williams, and then just saying, hey, I think that we have something here and we could all come together collectively to show the work that we're doing because that's what we're all about.
Thank you, Dr. Alston. Yes, we would love to hear from you, Dr. Lemons, as well as Dr. Rollins.
Sure. So I don't have much more to add outside of what Dr. Austin has already shared, other than to once again publicly thank her for entrusting us with this project and being so generous and so kind along the way to bring all of us in and support this project. If it were not for her, there would be no book. And it had always been my vision as the founder of the network to do a project of this nature. And so I am forever grateful to her for allowing us to be a part of it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Dr. Rollins?
Yes, and it's always a pleasure to work with Dr. Austin and Dr. Lemons, and also just to be able to see the diverse topics that were covered in this book. I think the book contributes so much to the fatherhood literature when areas that we haven't talked about a lot. I know from my own chapter, I've been looking for my own work around CBPR with fathers, the work with autism and fathers, girl dad relationships. Like, these are topics that we know about in our community, we talk about in our community, but we have not seen published. And being able to include, this work being led by fathers, but also to include fathers as co-authors is also significant with this book. And so since its publication, we have done a podcast together. We've been on a national podcast to talk about the book. We've had a book launch at the University of Pittsburgh to expose more people about the work that we're doing as a network, and just our commitment to really reclaiming the narrative around Black fatherhood. So super excited to be here with you all tonight.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Rollins, for expanding upon what we've been doing since publication. And we are just so grateful for all of our contributors, as well as the greater community that's been of great support of this work. And so now we're about to, I guess, get to the meat and potatoes of our conversation. And we're going to start off with focusing on our first 4 chapters. And however you guys want to do it, you can do like a little popcorn as well. We definitely want to hear from everyone. But this book really emphasizes defying stereotypes about Black fathers. And so, just in general, in your experience, what are some of the most harmful stereotypes you've seen? And how does your work or lived experience push back against them in the context of the chapter that you focused on? And
One,
anyone can go from chapters 1, Dr. Williams, Dr. Rollins, Dr. Holly, future Dr. Holly, and Dr. Alston.
I don't mind starting us off.
Yes.
Give me just 1 second. I'm trying to get to I did take notes. So I'm trying to get to my notes. So I think one of the things that was really important to me in participating in this collaborative project was really being able to push back against a lot of the common myths and stereotypes about Black fathers, generally, and specifically as it pertains to the world of disability and the world of autism. I think all of us would say that the narratives that we have come up against has been that Black fathers are absent, that they are uninvolved, that they are emotionally detached from their children's lives. And then there's this enduring belief that Black fathers are less capable or less committed to parenting compared to other groups. And we know that historically, that may have been the narrative back in the 60s and the 70s, but Black men have been showing up for their children for decades. And they are involved and they are hands-on and they know intimate details about how their kids function and what their kids need. And so really being in a position to amplify that reality was really important to me. The Black community is not comprised of deadbeat fathers, right? Like these are men who are actively involved, who, whether or not they're married, whether or not they're living 24/7 in that household, they are contributing, and what they're contributing is valuable and needed and significant. And so just being able to really amplify that truth was really important to me in the work that I was doing.
I love that. Would anyone else like to uh, lend a hand to answering this question as well with respect to defying stereotypes about Black fathers and how your work has pushed against these stereotypes, you know, in the
You can go
context of,
next.
yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that we did in chapter 1 is we gave an overview of the literature on African American fathers. Another thing that we did was we talked about them in context of the bioecological model. And a lot of times when we use theory, we use the ecological model by Brofenbrenner. What I really appreciated about what we did in our chapter was we focused on the process, person, context, and time model within Brofenbrenner's theory. And that gave us an opportunity to kind of look at the strengths that African American fathers bring, just in terms of all of their knowledge, and what they bring in terms of time, what they've learned over time, and individually what they bring to their parenting as a person. So I wanted to talk about stereotypes. So in my own work, I looked at African American fathers who were professors. So most of them had PhDs. And one of the things that we talked about was this idea of like balancing, also being very active in co-parenting as well. So when we think about stereotypes, I think a lot of times we also think about Black fathers as a monolith, like they look a particular way, also not really understanding or doing research on various voices so we can know that, these are some of the things that African American fathers who are balancing, working in a predominantly white academic environment, doing the things that they do. And then, what are some of the pros and cons of, when do I teach my children about race? When do we have these conversations? But also, how do I make sure that they have their own agency so then my thoughts, my experiences don't become their experiences, or lead them in, they can make up their own mind when it comes to some of these things. So um also, another thing that I wanted to add was the father's involvement during COVID. So we talked a little bit about COVID in our chapter as well. And one of the things that we do know from research, and particularly my research, is that African American fathers talked about balancing the childcare, taking on, one father called himself a de facto principal. So also, I think, while we know women took on a large amount of the schooling and the childcare during COVID, there's also this other narrative that fathers, particularly African American fathers who had this flexibility, were doing those things as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. I appreciate your input because it's such an interesting input, especially when we're thinking about the historical context as well as the unique experiences of professional Black fathers, i.e., fathers who are Black fathers who are in academia, as well. So now, a central theme of the book was really focused on amplifying strengths. And so, in particular, what strengths do you see Black fathers demonstrating when it comes to health, parenting, and community life that really deserves a lot more recognition?
I'll go ahead and add in on that particular question. So for chapter 4, when we talked about father engagement in early childhood programs, the goal was to really show that fathers made contributions to education. Fathers are very much involved in education, even outside of the school environment. So to help educators see the contributions that fathers make, but also the importance of the contributions that they make outside of the school environment, and for educators to think more broadly about the involvement that happens, knowing that for culturally diverse communities, the involvement is normally not in PTA, it's not in the school environment. It's not in volunteering at the school because of the context that's happening. And so it's important for educators to understand, validate, and respect what's happening outside of the school environment with parents, and to acknowledge that as viable involvement, and involvement that is supporting their children in their education. So the goal was also to, one, defy the stereotype that Black fathers are not involved in their children's education, to challenge the stereotype that Black fathers are not involved, and to show that Black fathers, the research indicates Black fathers are actually the most involved fathers. And so let's be clear in saying that. The research speaks for itself. And so there's a false narrative that is persistent throughout history, it seems. But again, that narrative is not true. We know that Black fathers are the most involved fathers. We also know that Black fathers, regardless of where they live at, whether they live in the home or outside of the home, are still the most involved fathers. And so essentially what we're talking about is the quality of time that is spent. Overall, I think our chapter one gave fathers and also individuals, educators, insight on how to, first of all, how fathers are making contributions in education, but also we use Epstein's theory of school, family, and community partnerships to show the importance of partnering with families and partnering with communities to aid students in their education. And Mr. Cotton also focused on setting strategies, providing fathers with ability to set SMART goals. And so in setting SMART goals, they can begin to further support their children in education. Overall, our goal was to show that fathers make contributions in education. It was to show, to challenge the narrative that Black fathers are not involved, and to show that the research actually indicates Black fathers are the most involved, and to provide fathers with strategies to move the work forward so that they can move the work forward within their own homes and communities and continue to do so, and teach others to do so as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alston. Would anyone else like to, lend a hand to answering that question as well with respect to the strengths that Black fathers have with respect to health, as well as parenting and community life
I
that may
would
deserve more recognition? Yes,
I
thank
would
you.
love to share just a few thoughts that I had, Dr. Bolar.
Yes,
Um,
please.
so within the world of disability and autism specifically, Black fathers show remarkable patience, and they are adapting their parenting style to meet their child's unique needs, and frequently developing new communication systems to connect with nonverbal or differently communicating children. Fathers report having deep emotional growth and empathy, which is not something that I think is often highlighted or talked about in terms of the nuance of care that fathers offer to their children, that they are attuned to what their children need, and that they are actively working to create systems within families that are going to support those children in thriving. Many Black fathers actively seek out and create supportive communities. And so there's a real commitment that you see with Black fathers in terms of community and advocacy, and helping other fathers overcome isolation and access resources, which is, we see that over and over and over again, that Black dads show up to spaces and immediately begin to turn around behind them and pull up the next generation and invest in the next generation and reach out to those in their community and their neighborhoods. And so I think that those are definite strengths that are not often magnified and talked about enough. And so I just wanted to make sure to uplift those.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask Dr. Rollins in particular with respect to some of your community engaged work, some of the strengths that need to be amplified in respect to fathers' involvement in the community setting.
Right. Yeah. And I think you all have really shared a good foundation for that, right? The reason why we don't have a lot of narrative about fathers is because of this stereotype that fathers are difficult to reach. And so they don't want to put the effort into recruiting and those types of things. But it is really important to have fathers as a part of telling their stories, as a part of defining what the research questions are and what the needs are. And so our chapter focusing on how to do that with fathers at the planning all the way through dissemination. So being a part of telling the story, being a part of collecting the data, interpreting the data is important to counter all of the different stereotypes that are out there about fathers, but also to add to some of the narratives that you all are sharing today in terms of them being involved, being engaged in education, being, all these stories with them having PhDs. These are stories that, we really don't hear a lot about because a lot of times when we see research about parents, it's really mothers. When we see research about adults, it's really women, and a lot of times we just are not educating our students or educating other practitioners to seek out those opinions and the partnership of fathers in conducting research to add to what we already know, about other populations. All of these unique nuggets and perspectives that you all are bringing up, we won't get if we don't involve fathers. And so that's, I think, the way that we defy stereotypes, and that's the way that we continue to amplify strengths by including them at the table when we're making these decisions about what needs to be studied and what needs to be done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rollins, for that rich perspective. And, the focus of this book was also looking at, health and in fatherhood in particular. And so, from your perspective, what health challenges or supports most affect Black fathers and their ability to thrive in their families and communities?
I just wanted to add something really quickly, Dr.
Of
Bollard, to
course, of
the
course, of
last question.
course.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I wanted to just take a brief moment to elevate some of the literature as well that's been conducted relating to the role that Black fathers play in maternal and child health. So that's another area of work where we are starting to learn the important role that they play in promoting health among women as well as children. You have a lot of Black men that are serving as doulas now. And then also, I have had the privilege and honor of doing a couple of research studies, conducting a couple of studies looking at the role of Black fathers in the reproductive health of their adolescent and adult daughters. And in both cases, in both studies, for both adolescent girls as well as adult women, we have found that Black fathers play a significant role and make a difference in the pregnancy outcomes and the decision making of their adult and adolescent daughters. So I just wanted to elevate those two areas as it relates to the strengths of Black fathers when it comes to the health of our women and children.
Oh,
Can I just add to that? I know it's not my time yet, but I've been like bursting at the seams to
yes,
contribute
yes,
this.
yes, yes.
I mean, and this is anecdotal, kind of. I mean, it's not like he hasn't been included in research, but one of my writing partners, who is a Black male doctor, um, is raising his adult daughter's child. That child knows him as daddy, because he's coming up with my colleagues' other children that are younger. So, they, even though they're the baby's uncle and aunt, because of the age proximity, and because they are all being raised by him, this child and his mother are examples of exactly what this research in our book is talking about. And the irony with Black dads is, because they've just been doing what they've been doing, they don't see it as a big deal. They just do what they're supposed to do. So just wanted to add that.
Oh, no, thank you so much, Dr. Buckley. We really appreciate that. And I would, if we're going to get an opportunity to have Dr. Uh, Buckley introduce herself and in just a moment, because she's over chapter 6. So once we do our little segue into the next piece, we will definitely hear a little bit more from you and your background and what institution you're at. But I'm so happy you added that. That is such a rich experience there. Thank you for sharing. All righty. So now we're, I guess, segueing into our last question that's looking specifically at health and fatherhood. And From your perspective, what health challenges or supports would you say most affect Black fathers in their ability to thrive in their families as well as in their communities?
I'll start with this one. I think it's important to recognize the structural barriers that exist because those same structural barriers that affect women also affect men. And men, especially fathers, are often not provided with the same supports and resources and health and for their own health, so that as they're supporting their families and communities and thriving, that they're also thriving too. I think that there needs to be a spotlight on it because if we're talking about strengthening families and the family as a collective, when everyone in the family is stronger, then the family and communities are stronger. And so we also have to focus on providing fathers with the resources and supports that they need for their own health so that they too can be healthy and thrive and really understand what those barriers or challenges are or what those supports are so that we can replicate them more.
Thank you, Dr. Alston. Would anyone else like to contribute to that question?
I can just add a little bit more to that. So, also looking at African American fathers who are faculty members. So, if we're thinking about things like leave, we also know through the research that environments that support fathers taking leave, then the fathers are more likely to take that leave. So I think that that's also important to think about when we think about, allowing opportunities for self-care. So if a father is welcoming a new child or adopting, that to make sure that we are also creating environments where fathers feel comfortable taking that leave. Also, like thinking about also, another thing when it comes to health, especially looking at African American fathers who are faculty members, is self-care. And also, being in academia, balancing service, research, teaching, all of these things, and then involvement with children, I think that it's also important to think about what does that work-life balance look like? What does self-care, how am I being intentional about self-care? So the fathers that I interviewed for my dissertation study talked about and being intentional about having time with their partner, or being intentional about time with children as well, and then also time for self. Um, as well. And another thing that came up that was an emerging finding in my study was the role that Black Greek letter organizations play in that support system for African American fathers as well. I had 20 participants, and about 14 of them were members of Black Greek letter organizations, which said a lot for how those groups support these men, not just in their work life, but also in their home life as well.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And I guess my last question for our authors from the chapters 1 through 4 would be, you know, looking back since the book has been published, what progress do you think has been made in supporting Black fathers, and where do you still see some of the most pressing needs for Black fathers?
I'll start by saying that I think as we collectively do this work, we continue to make progress, but we know very well that there is still much to be done. And so we still must be consistent and persistent with doing this work. We've since we started this book and since this book was published, the nation has changed, right? And there are numerous challenges. And those challenges affect families, those challenges affect fathers, those challenges affect children, those challenges affect economics. So it's a systemic challenge. And so there is still work to do, and there will continue to be work to do. And I just want to uplift us as we continue to do the work to push the true narrative forward that fathers are important in the lives of their children and families. Fathers make contributions, and Black fathers are present in the lives of their children and families. And the research indicates that Black fathers are the most involved fathers.
Thank you, Dr. Alston.
I'll add to that and speak more so to the part of the question that asks about some of the most pressing issues and needs. One of them that I'd like to highlight is related to opportunity gaps for Black men, particularly as it relates to wealth building. We all know that wealth building is important to Black families as a whole, but when we look at the history of slavery, we understand why Black families have not been able to build wealth in the same ways as our counterparts. And so we know that this is important for families in general, but particularly when we think about the provider role and the breadwinner role that many Black men play, opportunities to build wealth are particularly important for Black men. So that's one of the most pressing issues, I would say, that Black men are facing today. The playing field is not equal when it comes to opportunities to build wealth for their families. And we know how important this is when you are shut out of opportunities and you don't have the opportunities that you feel you need to build wealth. It affects your outlook on life. It affects your identity as a man. And so we really need to be thinking about how we can increase opportunities to build wealth for Black men. In addition, Dr. Austin alluded to this earlier in terms of there being continuous and persistent gaps in father specific services and disproportionalities in support services for women in comparison to men. There are many programs out there for women, such as WIC and all various different programs that often fall under the umbrella of maternal and child health. But we often talk in this field about how there's the father is often missing from the equation in maternal and child health. And so we know that we need to address this issue in terms of creating service systems that serve fathers well and effectively. And then finally, I will say that another pressing issue, particularly in the Black community, is child support and the attention that it often creates in co parenting relationships. We know that the system often pits men against women. And one of the things that I had the opportunity to conduct a study looking at co parenting and the extent to which Black men's mental and physical health was impacted in these relationships, particularly when the man felt undermined in his parenting. And we know that the child support system has a way of undermining or making parents feel undermined in some way, shape, or form. And so what we found is that the mental and physical health, every indicator of mental and physical health that we studied was impacted when men felt undermined in their co-parenting relationship. And so what we're not talking about as it relates to child support, we know that it has an effect, but we often are not considering how it impacts men's mental and physical health. And what I find, even anecdotally, in my conversations with men that have had contact with the child support system and have experienced the distress that it often causes, is that they're not talking about how it's affecting them mentally and physically, but it is. And many of them are suffering in silence. And so in this publication that I mentioned, we are framing undermining, feeling undermined in parenting, this effect that it has as a social determinant of health, because it is impacting the health outcomes of Black fathers in particular. And so, because we know that they're most affected by the system, the punitive nature of the system, Black men tend to be the most affected group. And so this is something that we need to be talking about more in the context of health. Not to say that we're not talking about child support, we're talking about it, but we're not necessarily talking about it in the context of the health of Black men. And so I want to elevate that as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lemons. And I think that that is a good segue into our second half of the book. And at this time, I would love for Dr. Buckley to introduce herself. She was one of the authors for chapter 6, and tell us a little and the title of your chapter, as well as what institution you are coming from.
All right, thanks so much. I'm really sorry. I was sitting here and just spaced out. So, Dr. Williams, I kind of empathized with you earlier when you were like, "Wait, what's the title of my chapter again?" I didn't know what my chapter number was. It is such an honor to be here with all of you. I love this work that we're doing, and I'm truly honored to be a part of this network. So, I'm Melissa Buckley. I have the distinct privilege of serving as the department chair of the social work department at Coppin State University here in Baltimore, Maryland. Um, I'm here representing my two co-writers. We wrote the title in the chapter rather entitled #GirlDad, the Black father-daughter relationship. And I am really looking forward to sharing with you a little bit more about our research. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Buckley. And I'm excited to dive into our second half and hearing from you and Dr. Don McDonald, Mr. Rout, and Dr. Lemons. And so to get us started, our focus of this book when it comes to Black fatherhood was on parenting in particular. And what would you say are some unique approaches, traditions, or strategies that Black fathers use in parenting that really stand out to you?
You want to
I'll,
go, Dr. Lemons, or you want me to go?
yeah, I'll go first. I'll go first. So one of the things that I'll mention, so another project that I've had the privilege and honor of working on looks at the involvement of Black fathers in their children's education in the context of inequities, systemic inequities that we know exist. And Dr. Austin alluded to this earlier. She's our expert on Black father involvement in the education space. And so we had the opportunity to do a paper focused on this. And one of the things that we learned is that Black fathers often have a very unique way of educating their children about life and preparing them to interact in the real world that often goes unrecognized by school systems. So for a lot of Black fathers, they're with all the school stuff and the homework and this and that, but really what they're more interested in is you need to be ready for life. You need to be out here, understanding life, because life is going to life and you need to understand how to deal with that. And so that was really the concern for a lot of these Black men. And it wasn't so much that they weren't concerned about their kids' education, because they were. We know that in Black families in general, when you look historically, we have always had a positive regard for education. We understand the value of education. It's not that we don't. And so Black fathers get that, but it's just that they bring something unique to the table when it comes to how they educate their children. We know there's a growing body of literature that looks at the role of fathers in the racial socialization of children, right? And so we know that there are some very real things happening out here in these streets when it comes to Black children and their interactions with law enforcement and things like that. So Black fathers are really playing a very significant role as it relates to socializing their children and educating their children to interact in the world that is not being recognized by our school systems. But they really are bringing a different type of education to the table that is valuable, and that should not be overlooked. And it goes beyond what is being learned in our school systems, which deserves greater attention and recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Lemons. Dr. McDonald, were you going to say something as well?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So to talk about our chapter 8, as a sociologist, we look a lot at how structure impacts a person's ability to um, be empowered to make decisions in their own lives and have agency, right? And so that was really what we brought out in this chapter, was looking at all the ways that were directly or indirectly in policy and law that constrain the way Black men were able to father their children, right? And what was as important as pointing out those ways that this was done, it was equally as important to point out how they resisted those ways, right? And so, like, even during slavery, when, legally they had no rights to their children, they couldn't marry the mothers of their children, right? They still found ways to father their children. They would use religion, right, as a way to father their children and give them guidance that wasn't seen to oppose what the slave holder said, in ways of like saying, well, God's law is above all laws, right? So if I tell you something that God says, you have to do that regardless of what the slaveholder said. So throughout history, fathers have found ways to continue to father their children and children within the community, regardless to how the state would interfere in that. We can even think about mass incarceration, about how fathers are actually taken out of their communities and unable to father their children. But we see how, you know, community dads and mentors would pull up, hold them up and father these children, so these children will still be fathered, even though their own biological father wasn't able to do it. So that is one of the ways that Black fathers have always been able to parent, even if they have to do it in an adaptive, covert way, they're going to get it done.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Would anyone like to lend a hand in expanding upon that question?
I don't think that anything can really be added to that. But what I will say is that it's central to our collective work that we continue to challenge the stereotypes and correct the false narrative. And it's also really important that we are, as researchers and practitioners, that we are really leaning into the historical context. Because I do believe that with that piece, that we will continue to empower the work that we are doing, but also empower Black dads and remind them and let them know that we see you, we've been seeing you, and we need you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Buckley. And so our next question is going to focus on, community was a great focus and theme of this work. And I want Mr. Rout to really answer this one because I know you do so much community engaged work. But how have you seen community organizations, faith institutions, or other grassroots networks play a role in supporting Black fathers?
Wow, I'm so glad you asked that question. 20 years ago, several responsible fatherhood practitioners and myself sat around a table and we said, listen, everybody's working in silos, man. What can we do to help men? And again, because historically, there has been a complex system of oppression put together against men. They wanted to call us boys forever. So now they got to have a paradigm shift and help us to be empowered as men. I don't think it's happening, as I can see by the current administration. It's heavy lifting, and we're not. Fathers are not monolithic. You know what I mean? We have different pockets of dads. We have, like I heard mentioned, fathers in education, professional dads. Those are not really the guys that I target in the community, because in the community, I got those, just as Dr. Marietta McDonough mentioned, just as involved dads. 1 out of 3 Black men are just as involved in some way, and over 90% of the men who are incarcerated are fathers, which creates an entirely just a whole new layer of barriers to be overcome, because it's very, very hard. And like you said, a man will do anything to take care of his kids. That's why we have so many men locked up, because they got to eat and they want their children to eat. And men feel so much better about themselves when they're able to handle their business. Society has not been good to us in that regard. So we've had to rely on taking jobs that we really don't, that really works against us in terms of dignity and self-worth. We've had to take those jobs because we're not given, even though we're graded on the same level and scale as our white oppressor, we don't have the same resources and support, societal supports that they do. So brothers have to become so creative. Like I used to hear black men say all the time, I got to make 15 cents, make $1 out of 15 cents. He is so right, because there are not many social opportunity supports out there for the black father. And I'd like to really just close with this. If you tell a lie long enough, not only will you begin to believe it, but those in your circle will begin to believe it. And that's the narrative of the black father. We know, I know, I've got 7 children and 15 grandchildren and been married to the same woman for over 38 years. I don't get visibility. They only want to hear about my justice involvement, the fact that I got locked up. Yes, I'm a baby boomer. And you know, it's only been less than 7 years since Jim Crow. Less than 70 years. So this whole responsible fatherhood movement involving the black man and propping him up to be a great father, we're competing against other segments of this society. And they're doing everything that they can to make us look like that current narrative. Deadbeat, not present, all of those things. They ensured, or they created infrastructure to make that narrative true. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to go on and on. I love this work.
No, this is good. No, we needed to hear every bit of it. No, thank you so much, because your experience is so rich. You have dedicated your life to serve in the community. And so we really appreciate everything that you have to share. Thank you. Anyone else want to lend a hand to really how have you seen community organizations or faith institutions or other grassroots networks play a role in supporting Black fathers?
I just want to add to it's difficult to follow Mr. Route. Thank you so much, Mr. Route, for everything you've shared. I appreciate it. But I just want to add in saying, I've been reflecting on this a lot lately because, as some of you may know, we are preparing to have our Women in Fatherhood event in Atlanta. And so I've been doing some historical research and looking at the role of Black women in the fatherhood movement. And in the process of doing so, I have reflected on how community, or the role rather, that community based organizations like women's clubs and things of that nature have played in the movement. And, historically, the focus has been on strengthening Black families, and the focus has been on the family unit as a whole. But what we are seeing now more often is community based organizations coming out in a very bold way in support of Black fathers, explicit support, right? Not implicit, because sometimes when we see the term family strengthening, well, that's implicit focus on the Black father, but I'm talking about explicitly, we are here to support Black fathers, period. And so there are some community-based organizations that I just want to take a moment to acknowledge. And thank you, Mr. Vernon Wallace, for being here with us from the Center for Urban Families. Vernon and I go way back at when I was a doctoral student at Howard. He supported me in my dissertation work and was there with me each night as I was coming in to collect my data. He was there with me to support me from start to finish. So I just want to acknowledge and thank him for being here. But I just want to acknowledge organizations such as the Center for Urban Families in Baltimore, Fathers, Families, and Healthy Communities in Chicago, the Fathers and Family Support Center in St. Louis. These are some of the organizations that have been pivotal in the Black responsible fatherhood movement. And what stands out to me with these organizations that I really appreciate is that they have been very intentional and unapologetic in focusing on strengthening the Black father and investing in the Black father as a way of investing in the family as a whole. And so it's something that I say often when it comes to our work as a network, is that if we can strengthen Black fathers, we can also strengthen Black families. And these organizations fundamentally understand this concept And so I want to just take a moment to acknowledge the community-based organizations that we now see coming out with an explicit focus on Black fathers, which is what is needed, right? So we know anytime when it comes to equity work, while we want to just sort of take a blanket approach, we know that sometimes in order to achieve equity, we need to have an explicit focus, period, unapologetically. And so I appreciate the work that's being done for these by these organizations, and feel like it needs to be highlighted and noted.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Lemons. And looking back, for all of our authors on this section, chapters 5 through 8, looking back since the book was published, what progress do you think has been made in supporting Black fathers? And where do you see the most pressing needs based on your area of expertise?
I want to jump in here. So, our chapter really emerged from Kobe Bryant's tragic death and the legacy that he left. And again, I just want to illuminate the fact that we know that Black fathers have always been present. But the thing about Kobe, because he was so visible, he had celebrity status, and that celebrity status was not only on the court. It was, the light was on who he was as a father and how he showed up with both of his daughters. And so the shift, and of course Kobe died well before our publication, but the shift that we have seen since this research is that Black dads are really beginning to feel more comfortable with this hashtag girl dad identity. We're finding that they want to be seen as, girl dads, and they're proud to be um, fathers to their sons as well. But like, we are seeing Black fathers really embrace and feel comfortable with and wanting to be acknowledged as nurturers, wanting to be, respected for the position that they hold in the lives of their daughters. They want it to be okay to paint their toenails with their daughters and have tea parties with their daughters. And so as we see this continuing to emerge, we understand fully that our work is just beginning, because we this gives us the permission, the green light, to not only research it from the girl dad side of it, but to continue the work on how to empower women who are daughters to fathers, and helping them to strengthen and explore those relationships.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Buckley. Yes, it's really interesting, seeing that even that hashtag still living on, and people really, fathers fully embracing it. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to add?
I just wanted to share that my research is firmly in the child support policy space, right? And so I was at a child support conference, practitioners conference, last week. And it was very interesting, even though at the federal level, there have been a lot of changes, right? A lot of states and local agencies are pushing back a little bit at those changes. And actually looking at how to quantify in-kind support to children from fathers. And as we all know here, that we're talking mostly about Black fathers, right? Anytime you talk about in-kind support rather than financial, we're talking about the child care that they provide, and the picking up the child back and forth from school, and the haircuts and all of those things that they provide that cannot be quantified with a child support order, right? And seeing that they're trying to figure out ways to capture that and give fathers credit for that were very interesting, especially in light of the chapter when we were talking about how Black fathers adapt their parenting when financial means are not the way as the breadwinner is not a way that they can do it. So I thought that that was very interesting. Even though we all know, can't use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. However, it was give me a lot of hope that there may be things that can capture the way Black fathers do support their children that aren't financial.
You just reminded me of something that's really important, and thank you so much for sharing that piece. And the child support part of the work that we do is something that we can't get away from. We are very strengths based in how we approach fatherhood research, but we must be honest, and acknowledge that it isn't all peaches and roses in every household and in every paternal relationship. And so, one of the things that we covered in our chapter is the fact that so yes, there is such a thing as paternal absence during the formative years of a child's life. This is real. We have to acknowledge that. But it does not mean that the relationship cannot be restored or even that the relationship can't be established. And so what we discovered was that fathers and daughters who engage in reconciliation can mutually heal and benefit from a restored relationship or a newly established relationship. And that is a rich piece of research that we want to ensure that everybody remembers.
So happy you said that, Dr. Buckley. It just reminds me that how things start, even if it's not on the best foot, doesn't mean that that's how it has to end. Like there's redemption. They can start anew, or heal, the past, and move forward, in a healthy manner. So I'm so grateful that you shared that. Would anyone else from the chapters 5 through 8 like to speak before we open up our opportunity to hear from our audience for questions?
I'd just like to say that for a number of years, we did a teen fatherhood program in the Atlanta area. In Fulton County, we had over 10,000 teen fathers. These are young men with a child or a child on the way, 13 to 19 years old. Somebody mentioned earlier that education is the key. So, what we did was we began to educate these young men about preconception health. Are you even ready to bring another life into this world? And they say stuff like things that crazy stuff like we just smashing. Well, unprotected, you can die from just smashing. And then they don't understand that whole child support terminology. We tell them you don't have to pay child support, you have to take care of your baby. You don't have to go through, we don't have to go through child support for you to take care of your baby. So what we would do, we would take these young men to Walmart for 6 months. It was a 6-month program. Once a month, they would receive, it's heavy lifting, they would receive a $25 gift card every class once a week. At the end of a month, they would have a $100 gift card. We would take them to Walmart and they could only buy baby related items, Pampers, car seats, things like that, so they could get in the habit of taking care of their babies. And it was so successful. It went on for a number of years, but the enemy to the destiny of the Black man intervened once again and canceled the program. But we provided some great programming for a lot of young men. A focus group told us what we needed to do, and that's what we did, and it worked. Today, with Dr. Latrice Rollins at Morehouse School of Medicine, we have Fathers Matter ATL. This was a brainchild of us coming together saying, listen, we don't need to operate in silos anymore. Let's become a collaborative. And that's when Fathers Matter ATL, 15 to 20 different agencies serving at least 7 critical areas of need for fathers: mental health, housing, employment, and that's just a few of them. But guess what? It was a dream 20 years ago, but it's working today. So in the community, we're getting a lot of work done right now.
I love it. And I think that that is a great segue into our time for questions. If you have any questions from the audience, this is a conversation. So if you would like to, you are more than welcome to unmute your microphone. Or if you're more comfortable putting your questions in the chat, you can feel free to do that at this time because we would love to hear from you. I love one of the comments in the chat from Jada Lawrence. She's with Fathers, Families, and Healthy Communities in Chicago, the nonprofit organization that serves fathers, Black fathers in the Chicago area. We had an opportunity to visit their organization this summer during our summit. And she said that there's a difference between being a deadbeat and being dead broke. And and I, that is so true because those financial resources can constrain those like physical resources that you are material resources that you can provide. But I love how you added, Mr. Rout, that it's not just about child support for those young men. It's you have to take care of your baby. And, a lot of times the way that children equate taking care of them is not money, it's time, it's time, it's through those experiences. And that's free. And that's really one of the most impactful ways that you can impact and take care of your baby, especially early on. It's in establishing that bond, it's in creating that connection that is so powerful beyond what sneakers you get them or how much money you're providing. They a lot of times kids don't even know much about that, but they know that daddy's here for my birthday, or daddy's here to help me and checking in on my bedtime routines. Like he's here, and those memories are what will last a lifetime. And those material assets a lot of times we forget about. And so thank you so much for sharing, both of you. But anyone else, you have any questions from our authors, want to get a deeper dive into some of the content that was shared, any questions you have about the book, how to access it. It is available on Amazon as well, but we are just here to answer any questions that you have about the work that we've done here with this book, or even the work that we do with our network as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. And this has been some wonderful content. Dr. Lemons, what up? How you doing? Good to see you. And so I've been in this field directly serving fathers in different capacities for about a little bit over 18 years now. And one, I was thinking about the question that you had earlier was pertaining to um, how communities are being more involved or engaged with Black fathers or with different ways. I know personally, one way is for me, I was looking at trying to shift the narrative of dads and also address a barrier issue. So, like partnering with organizations that seem to be adversarial at the time to a lot of my dads, such as the Baltimore City Office of Child Support, because I'm speaking from my experience at Baltimore City and dealing with the dads there from Center for Urban Families. And one of the things that I just thought was intentional was just making sure that we did presentations for the staff, because the majority of the staff was about 80% women on the staff, including the supervisors. And I wanted to make sure that there was no implicit bias when engaging and trying to serve and deal with these men, but also letting them know from the standpoint of what it is that we offer, the services we provide to the men that we're serving, because we have a shared population. But just trying to shift the narrative and speak to them that way, and just create different ways that they could be more collaborative with us at the time where they weren't. So, brokering deals for them to actually come to the site and see our dads and see their child support cases in the building, which was different than going to the child support locations in Baltimore City, because you got to deal with metal detectors and a lot of attitude and poor customer service, if I have to be honest. So I wanted to eliminate that and eradicate that. And it was a great partnership. But other partnerships that I thought that I wanted to help serve, particularly Black fathers better, was partnering with the Department of parole and probation, and just making sure we were good there as well. In addition to partnering with a lot of local elementary and middle schools, is what I found myself engaging in and and making sure that me and my team was always in those spaces, because I realized it's not a lot of men or Black men in those spaces in the schools as well. And I want these students to see us there and also see their dads there as well. So just holding those places and those spaces as well, I thought was important in community collaboration with, thinking about individuals who serve a shared population as I, and seeing how we can better serve them. And the question that I have was, according to your research, all of you who've been doing research, and I just want to see if it's a trend that you may have found based off. I just think about it on my experience. I've noticed that engaging dads, the approach and everything I've had to turn and tailor as dads got younger. And what I'm noticing is with the younger dads, uh, they are more willing and more nurturing than I seem to be the older dads, and they want to be recognized as that. So when you guys are talking about the willingness to paint the fingernails, this, that, and the third, oh yeah, like me, I am a self-proclaimed girl dad, and I feel like the death of Kobe kind of helped to coin that. It was like you had dads who felt that way, but then when you had a coin to throw out, they'd be like, yeah, oh, yeah, I am a girl dad, because I got the T-shirt and all that. I got all girls, no boys, so I'm by default. But what I noticed with a lot of the younger dads, because I've been doing this long enough to serve the dad and the son now, and I'm starting to notice that the younger generations, and I just want to know if research, I guess, corroborates that in some way. They seem to be having a willingness to be more nurturing. Do you
Yeah.
do you think that's good?
So I do not know if the research supports that yet. But I think it's an interesting point and something certainly worth exploring further, because I think that generationally we know that there are some, there are some things that each generation sort of masters. You know what I mean? But what I do believe is that, okay, so while the older generation, like my generation, dad parents who would be like 40s and 50s, they may not necessarily be painting toenails and having tea parties, but those dads know how to cornrow. They know how to do their daughter's hair. They know how to cook dinner and stuff like that. So while it may not be the exact same sort of activities, I think that we can safely say that from generation to generation, Black fathers in particular are doing things that the media simply will not acknowledge. That's my take on it. But you're giving me a really great idea, so I think I'm gonna suggest this to my writing partners, and we're gonna explore it further.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. I
And
like it.
thank you. Go ahead, Vernon. I'm sorry.
No, I'll digress. I like to listen.
No, 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 no. I was just going to say that perhaps the more contemporary literature has not bared this out yet. However, I think when we look historically, it makes sense in terms of like going back to what Dr. Buckley has shared. She utilized the term generation to generation a lot. And so I think that when we look at generational differences, there is some literature that points out how the role of fathers has evolved over time. When we look at, in this from slavery, and I wrote about this a little bit in my dissertation, but when we look back at slavery, the role was racial, really protector, right? In terms of a lot of the violence and various things that were going on at the time during slavery, the lynchings and all those kinds of things. And so the role of fathers at that time had a lot to do with the protection of children. And then, that role shifted, and we see more, 60s, 70s, the racial socialization piece coming into play with a lot of Black fathers, the provider role, right? And so that's another way in which the roles of Black fathers have changed. And then now with this younger generation, it is the new involved father, is what we're seeing more of now. And I think social media has a very big role to play in terms of the images that are often put out of the dad holding the baby, the dad in this with the stroller, and all of these kinds of things, where now it has become okay to be that nurturing, because you use the term nurturing, right? And
Yeah.
so, it's the new nurturant father is the term, that is now used. So I think when we look historically, we do see the arc, and the evolution of fathering roles have changed and moved in this direction of being more nurturing. My dad's generation, and I even had a recent conversation with my dad about this, but my dad's generation was, the provider.
Yeah.
As long as I'm putting food on the table and clothes on your back, I'm doing my job. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So,
mm,
and I mean, that's not to say that that's the position that my dad has necessarily taken with me, because he hasn't. My mom is, I'll tell people all the time, my dad was way more nurturing even than my mom was growing up. But his generation, when you look
yeah.
generationally as a whole, that was often the perspective. There wasn't that emotional connection that a lot of fathers have now with their kids. It was just staunch provider.
Mhm.
And then Dr. McDonald, thank you for your comment in the chat. She always reminds me to think about place, because, even geographically, we see differences in how men approach fatherhood. So it's a generational thing, but it's also a geographical thing. And, place plays a role in that as well. So,
I,
yeah.
I also I appreciate your comments, Dr. Lemons. I think that the comment right above Dr. McDonald's is one, and we don't have time to unpack it today, but that comment really speaks to historically why fathers broadly, but certainly why Black fathers were not necessarily as public with the activities that they would engage with their children. I'm pulling the term metrosexual out of that comment because of the inherent connotation in that term. The inherent connotation in that term within this context would not be empowering. It would not encourage and uplift Black fathers, painting their daughters' toenails. There's a negative connotation within the usage of that particular term. And so it really just speaks to the fact that as we are engaged in this work as practitioners and researchers, we must constantly be aware of what the challenges and barriers are, while we are simultaneously doing the diligent work of empowering our Black fathers.
Have you guys ever heard of something called and this is, I guess, speaking on the vein of social media and then also the more nurturing thing I was making a point of just noticing it and it being with younger dads. And it just made me think about a group that I stumbled across when I'm doing a lot of research and stuff. Anybody ever heard of the what is it called? The Daddy Strollers Social Club?
I think I've heard of them.
And it's basically it started out I think they're based out of Texas, but they now have like chapters in different cities. And it started out with four dads who all had young children doing a WhatsApp and just basically meeting up with their strollers. And it turned into like dads, 50 dads and 50 strollers having to meet up at the park, like all of these dads with the kids that are in strollers. And then some of them had their teenage sons walking alongside of them. And they had like different walks in the park and stuff like that. And I just thought that that was cool because it was a lot of dads with a lot of strollers, and that visually is something that you don't see a lot of, particularly when is no moms in the picture when it comes to that. Daddy Stroller Social Club is the name of it, and I just thought that that was cool, and it was a way for them to leverage social media to get the platform up. But it also highlights the willingness and the wanting of a lot of the younger dads be out to be out and seen in that way, and I just thought that that was kind of cool and another example of what I'm noticing out here in the field.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, social media, and I actually did a paper on this too, but a lot of ways, social media has played a large role. And even though we know that the narratives persist, when it comes to Black dads, but certainly there are a lot of ways in which Black fathers are rewriting their own narrative via social media.
And I must add that the Black female has a lot to do with the way generations have changed. I grew up under a very toxic masculinity where the men went out of work and the women really they weren't in the workplace at that time. So the man did all the work and the woman did all the housework. But that kind of morphed over into now. But what I'm seeing, especially with the teen fathers and the teen mothers that I'm working with, they demand more. They say, hey, you're going to help me keep this baby. They even fight. They fight, you all. We have to tell the men, you don't fight with the ladies. They jump on us, Mr. Root. That's what they tell us. So each generation has an influence. Like I told my daughters, I said, if you tell that young man that you don't like him sagging, he won't show up at this house sagging. So that kind of influence. When my mama said to my stepfather, look, I'm not gonna go to work all day and come home and wash and cook and okay, that was beginning of a change. And my sisters, they didn't even play that. That brother knew he had to come in and share the responsibilities, and there were no gender assigned roles. So I think women have a very large, they have a large role in changing the dynamic.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think this will be our last question before we hear from our founder and director. And this last question is, I'm wondering about the process behind writing this book. Did research include interviewing fathers, open dialogue, etc.?
You want me to answer that, Dr. Barr?
That might be a good one, Dr.
Any
Lewis.
or any of us?
Anyone can, but you can feel free to take a stab at it first.
Okay. So I think, it varied from chapter to chapter in terms of the approach that each contributor took. I can speak for my chapter, chapter 5, where we looked at the in-law relationship. This was one of my most favorite projects that I've ever worked on, which is because it's so unique. We really explored the male in-law relationship in Black families. So we talk a lot about the sibling relationship, the father-daughter, father-son, co-parenting, marital, all the relationships. But the one that we often don't talk about is the in-law relationship. And there's a great deal of ambiguity in this relationship in terms of, what does it mean to be a good son-in-law or a good father-in-law? What does that look like? And so we kind of all go into this relationship sort of blindly, not really knowing what to expect. And so we actually, in our chapter, utilize qualitative interviews to interview fathers. So we did actually have data that we included. Ours was an empirically based chapter. And so we learned a lot of things in that chapter in terms of the value of these relationships. And we really looked at it from the perspective of how can these relationships be utilized as a context for strengthening Black families. How can we build on these relationships in ways? Because what we found was that a lot of the fathers leaned on, especially if they didn't have a father growing up. They looked to their father-in-laws for that mentorship, for that support during difficult times in their marriage and in their fathering. And so these relationships really can be leveraged as a way of strengthening Black men in their roles as husbands, fathers, partners, and in turn, in strengthening their role as parents and as men. And so I say all of that to say that for us in our chapter, we part of what went into it was the qualitative interviews that we did with the men. And actually, no, we didn't conduct those interviews. We drew on a data set that was provided to us from some other researchers that have been studying in-law relationships, but they have been studying it primarily among white families. So a lot of the data that you'll, or sorry, the research rather that you'll see out there on the in-law relationship is really either from the mother-daughter in-law perspective or within the context of white families. So this was a huge contribution to the literature as it relates to adding that piece on Black families, in particular, the male in-law relationship.
Thank you, Dr. Lemons. And as Dr. Lemons stated, various chapters took on various different approaches. Some might have been a systematic review of the literature, maybe even utilizing quantitative data with respect to surveys or qualitative data with respect to um, interviews and focus groups. So it was a nice little cross section of different approaches to the research methods there. And just in the interest of time, I want to make sure that we have time to hear from the founder of the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network, our founder and director, Dr. Lemons. If you have any parting words for us at this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bolar. So thank you to each of you for coming out and being with us this evening. We are in the process of rebranding our webinars as family conversations because we really wanted to feel like just that. We wanted to feel like a family conversation in a space in which we as a Black community can have conversations about the things that are important to us. And so we hope that this experience has been just that. You all are a part of the conversation and now a part of the family. And so we hope that you have received that on this evening. And also we hope that as a takeaway from this, that you will find ways in your own personal lives and communities to defy stereotypes and amplify the strengths of Black fathers. We all have a role to play in doing that. And so we hope that you have walked away with some tidbits and some nuggets and some things that you can do. And we hope that some of the things that were said here in this space this evening have provoked some thoughts within you that will cause you to go forth in your own communities and your own lives, looking for ways that you can help in the fight to defy stereotypes and amplify strengths of Black fathers and families. So in terms of just sharing a couple of resources, I dropped everything in the chat, but just wanted to reiterate that you can connect with us on LinkedIn by our name, so the Black Female Fatherhood Scholars Network, or on our website at www.bffsn.com. I've also dropped a link to the book in the chat if you'd like to purchase the book. The recording will be made available on our YouTube channel, which I've given the link to in the chat as well. Just also wanted to put out there that our next webinar will be on Black fathers and child support in October, and we hope to see you there. We'll send out information about that and share that information on LinkedIn and so that you can get access to how to join our next webinar. And then we are also in the process of having an event in Atlanta in March 2026, as I mentioned earlier, where we will be honoring the contributions of Black women to the fatherhood movement. And we invite all of you to be there as well. As I mentioned earlier, Black women have contributed significantly to the movement, the Black fatherhood movement, but unfortunately, many of their contributions have either been erased or have not been included in the history. And so that is our work to do as an organization, as an organization that supports Black women in this field. We have taken it up to be the historians of the work that Black women have contributed and continue to contribute to this field. So be on the lookout for more information on that as well. And thank you again for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Lemons, and thank you to all of our amazing contributors. Until next time, we look forward to seeing you all soon, and thank you so much for joining us for this family conversation.
Peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernon. Thanks, Dr. Bolar, so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Well,
Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining us. Yes, it's just so exciting.